I coach a lot of clients that are preparing to break into tech sales, and I wanted to make a video today talking about the top interview questions and answers you can expect if you're breaking into tech sales for the first time. As a quick overview as well, the interview process is typically anywhere from 3 to, on the extreme side, 7 stages, where you're talking usually to an HR recruiting manager or sales manager up front, and then you're starting to get into more extensive interviews with other account executives or other managers on staff. And or towards the final stages, you're actually doing extreme exercises and really going deep into a mock discovery call, cold call, etc. So the video today is going to talk about those maybe first and second round interviews where you're talking to a recruiter, and then on the second interview where you're having a casual conversation with the sales manager. Again, the reason that I'm making this video is that, yes, I can tell you kind of the common questions to expect, but sales is a little bit different. Whereas in engineering, in my own experience, and other careers, sometimes it's good to have a very polished answer. There's elements of that in sales, but I also think in many times the candidates that I work with are overemphasizing trying to sound perfect as opposed to fostering a genuine conversation. And what that means when you get to an interview is you sound very inauthentic and you sound like, I want to do sales because it is a new and exciting challenge and the income potential is great. I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, I'm going to talk about the questions and answers, but fundamentally change your mindset. The recruiting manager, the sales manager, they go through 100 of these interviews a month. They don't care about the cookie cutter answers. And so all that to say, yes, I will give you an idea of how to navigate this conversation, but don't be afraid to really dive into your experience and use this video to find a better way to formulate and present your experience. So the first question that's really obvious, this almost, I would say 99 out of 100 interviews, I've been asked this question first, which is, tell me about your background. And I'm going to use my own experience and show you how I prepared that, because I transitioned into tech sales into my late 20s. I had previously been an engineer, and I had also previously been an amateur athlete competing internationally with Team USA. At the same time, they don't want to hear a 5-minute response to a question that should take maximum 2 minutes. So again, as we get into this first question, tell me about yourself, regardless of what we say, the important thing, and I literally have the clients that I coach do this, put 90 seconds on a clock and practice this answer again and again until you are consistently under 90 seconds. In almost any situation or any question that you're answering, you should never go over 90 seconds, and I'll show you how to navigate that effectively. So if I were asked the question, tell me about your background, Eric, what I'm going to do is, yes, tell them about my background, but also start to paint the picture of why I got interested in tech sales in the first place. Another thing that I'll do, because my background is rather unorthodox, is like maybe you're coming from a different career, I will mention when I start the answer to the question that they can feel free to go back into any of these experiences, and I'm providing a summary. So I'll give you a real example right now. So hey, Eric, first thing I want to know, tell me a little bit more about your experience and why we're talking today. Hey, appreciate the time, and I do have a bit of an unorthodox background, so at any point if you want to kind of tap into those experiences, let me know. But I actually started my career as an engineer. When I graduated college, I was actually training with Team USA as well. We did not qualify for the Rio Olympics, and at that time it made sense to pursue an engineering career at a big tech company that I got a job at. There, I was doing a lot of frontline support with key accounts, and that's actually where I got exposed to tech sales in the first place. So a lot of times if I worked with a big company, I found an inefficient way or an old technology they were using, I would bring in the sales team and then facilitate that conversation and do some technical scoping to help them buy and purchase more relevant technology. So that really piqued my interest, and to make a long story short, I worked as an engineer for 3 years. I ultimately got to a point where I had to play overseas full time or retire from sport professionally. So I did choose to go into sport, and at that point, coming back to the workforce and kind of having gone through another Olympic cycle, having the opportunity to play internationally, I was done with that part of my career, and I knew from my engineering experience that I wanted to go into tech sales. I thought it was a great medium to combine both my technical aptitude as well as my competitive drive from the sports world. And since then, I've been in a tech sales role and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm talking to you today because I found your company interesting because of XYZ, right? And so again, you see that yes, I'm talking about my background. I'm also, while I'm not going into the ins and outs of everything about my background, I've given them a few key points they can grab onto and dive into further. Maybe they very much value my past experience as an engineer supporting key accounts. Now I've queued them up to ask that question and I'm taking control of the conversation. Maybe they take an interest in my athletic career, but that being said, the unfortunate reality is, while it was a very life-changing experience, etc., a lot of companies candidly don't care that much. Like, they say it's cool, they acknowledge the work ethic required, but no one's going into extensive detail about my sports background, so that's why I make that a shorter keynote. And then on the front side too, I mentioned that I've already had some tech sales experience, so I give them the opportunity to dive into that. And I've taken this huge conversation that could go anywhere, and I've now really put some bumpers up and made sure that they're going to ask me about the things that I want them to ask, right? Now we've taken control of the conversation. Now we have a clear way to guide it and make it very compelling that I'm truly interested in tech sales. Also now, a very common question if you're coming from a different career, or maybe you're graduating college or whatever your case might be, if you've never been in tech sales, a very common question is why tech sales? And this is also where I think a lot of people trip up. I've heard everything you can imagine. You'd be amazed. And it's anything from like very cookie cutter answers of like, sales is the future of my career. I want unlimited earning potential. And like that in of itself is a good answer, but the way that people like want to recite it and like practice it a million times and just say the same thing without connecting it to other elements of their career. Or on the flip side, again, I mentioned that 90-second limit. I would say outside of the story of your own personal background, that's maybe 90 seconds maximum, any other response should be a minute or less. And so when you're talking about why tech sales, maybe you achieved a lot. Like for me, again, I achieved a lot in sport. I was very fortunate to have that experience. I had an engineering background and I didn't like the limited potential from a financial upside. So yes, of course, I want the unlimited earning potential that sales provides, but I have a very clear and compelling story as not to only why I want more money, but why tech sales. I have the technical aptitude, I have the competitive drive, and I found through my own life experience that tech sales was a great medium for all of this. Yes, there's an earning component that is certainly a part of it, because for me, going from a place where I had to earn my spot on the roster all the time, where I had to consistently train and outperform my peers, to go to a steady desk job where I got the same paycheck all the time, where I was doing the same things again and again, wasn't exciting. I wasn't really stimulated. And that's a much more compelling answer than just saying, yeah, you know, I've kind of been average at all of these different things in my career and now I want to make more money, right? Like, again, candidates aren't saying it that explicitly, but that's what's conveyed when you just have this generic cookie cutter answer, right? Give me a little bit more justification. It's okay. Maybe you went and thought you wanted to be, I don't know, like a completely different career. Maybe you want to be a chef or something. And now you found tech sales and you've done a ton of research and you've really realized that it's where you want to go. That's fine. That's a much more compelling story. I'm more compelled the fact that you have a cool and unique background than just hearing the same cookie cutter answer that I'm hearing from 80+% of candidates of like, tech sales, unlimited earning potential, I'm a competitive person and I'm a people person, I like to talk to people, and you know, who cares? So all that to say, that's the reason I don't ever want to give you one thing to say. It's dive into your experience and you're crafting every conversation and every answer in a way that helps you control the conversation. One of the students that I worked with recently achieved a high degree of success in the loan and mortgage industry, and more power to them. Don't shy away from that. That's great, because what it shows is a couple of different things. One, you've achieved notable success in a different domain, which means sales, which isn't a skill that is typically taught in school, taught in really any domain. It shows me that you have the ability to go from zero to a top performer in another industry, which again, especially at the entry level of sales, it's just more important to be coachable, have the aptitude for sales, and have the drive to succeed long term. The reason I'm not going to give you 20 different questions, I've got one more, is that the important thing is if you're doing this effectively, you're guiding the conversation and you're limiting the types of questions that they can ask, and you're saving them time and making their life better, because you're not just another candidate, you're not just another one that's going through checkbox by checkbox, right? You've crafted your story, made it very clear that you have a desire to be in tech sales, and just like this last question, I think it's a missed opportunity by a lot of people interviewing in sales, which is, where do you want to go in tech sales? Especially if you're coming from a different career, it's somewhat in line with why tech sales. But if you're talking about your future goals, it's a huge missed opportunity, because people, for whatever reason, they tie it to income. They don't take the opportunity to show that they've done a lot of research in sales. And so as an example, a great response to where do you want to go with this company, where do you want to go with tech sales, is, hey, I see your average SDRs are in the role for about 12 to 18 months and then transition to account executive. That's definitely the goal for me. I want to get to that account executive role over time, 5 years from now. Well, you can never say exactly where it's going to be. I have a high interest in being in an enterprise account executive role, given the types of accounts that I would get to work with, and certainly a non-trivial factor being the earnings potential at that enterprise level. What you've done is, one, shown that you have a drive to not just come in and just be thankful to have the job. You're coming in with a clear goal in mind to continue to succeed, to continue to push yourself and excel, but also by articulating that you know the career path of tech sales. I can tell without you saying it explicitly that you've done research on what tech sales is like. You're not just chasing this tech sales job because it's some fantasy of like making more money, because there's a lot of candidates that just kind of come into this process aimlessly. So if you're showing that you know what their reps do, you're showing that you've done research on what the career path is at their company, this takes all of 5 minutes on LinkedIn to do. Typically, it's just SDR to account executive. There's 3 levels of account executive depending on the company that you're at, which is small business or SMB, mid-market, and then enterprise. And at that enterprise level, you're making $300,000 plus a year if you're doing well, etc. And so if you come in and say, hey, you know, I know this SDR job is a prove it position. I really respect the leadership. It looks like a great place and a great product to sell. And candidly, my goal is to promote into that account executive role. Long-term, I want to be an enterprise account executive. That's a great answer. It does it in a way that shows that you know that it's going to take a lot to learn. You're going to come in and be humble and work in that SDR position effectively, but also it's not a problem to have ambitions beyond that. When I was in my late 20s breaking into tech sales, of course I didn't want to be an SDR forever. I am more intrigued by someone who can clearly articulate where they want to go, and it's realistic. It's not just, I want to make $500,000 a year. Like, if you actually can articulate a very realistic path and show that you already know what it takes, I'm very inclined to continue talking to you. I'm very inclined to push you through to the next step of the interview process, because at a minimum, you know roughly where you're going and you seem coachable and humble enough to then come in and be effective, learn over time, and succeed in the role. I don't want to get into too many different questions and answers, because flip the script. This is boring to recruiters. This is boring to sales managers. So when you come in with these very compelling answers, you are always first going to be asked about your experience. If you queue up that question in a way that concisely represents your background, concisely highlights a few different points that will create interest and have them probe into those further, that's the first half of the conversation right out of the gate that you've already guided, and you're avoiding these cookie cutter questions. You're avoiding these boring answers, right? And then when they ask things like, why tech sales? Yes, it's okay to talk about wanting more money. It's okay to talk about wanting to go and achieve at the highest level, at the enterprise account executive level, but also by clearly articulating that maybe you've had success in other domains and you reached your full earning potential there. You see higher upside in tech sales. You know what the tech sales career path looks like. You're going to convince me without saying it explicitly that you've done a lot of research. But what that's also going to do is convey that you're smart enough to probably have multiple interviews going on at the same time. And now I, as an interviewer, am going to want to push you through this process as fast as possible. I hope you got something out of that. Again, take control of the situation. Recognize that this is boring and a checkbox for many people. So make it exciting, make it easy for them to experience and go through that process, and you should have a lot more success. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.